Hey everybody, sorry for the delay. Little technical difficulties, but hey, things are what they are. So I have a bittersweet story to share with everybody. And I've got a couple of good friends here with me. I've got Luna all the way from down under, and I have Tommy with me. And it's going to be an interesting evening. No telling where conversation is going to go, but I'm kind of in the mood to share a bittersweet story, and oddly enough, this one's mine. So, gonna talk about Olivia Newton-John and '80s culture. And I've got like the only other person I know who knows as much about the '80s as Tommy with me. So, how was your week? How have you been?
I'm recovering from a terrible leg infection, Jules. I'm actually still taking antibiotics. I just had a rough past 2, 3 weeks, really bad.
Wow, sorry to hear about that. Yeah, ironically, I was on my way to the gym at the stoplight that usually the only stoplight in town that I don't have reception on satellite radio, but oddly enough, the signal stayed through, and that's when I heard about the news about Olivia Newton-John. On my way to the gym, and then they play physical, and it's like, and there was part of
Actually,
me that was like, go home,
I remember it
go
was
home, tuck your
Monday.
head on the pillow.
It was Monday, and actually, of all things, I was on Facebook and I saw that Richard Marks had posted something about her passing, and I was like, "Wow, that's the first I heard of it."
Wow, yeah, I heard it on my way to the gym, and then when I got to the gym, it hit me. It's like, this is why I joined the gym to help me with situations like this. Because it was I when I heard news of my mother when she got a form of terminal cancer, and it's like, okay, I that's when I made life choices, lifestyle changes, and then that moment when I got there that Monday, it was like this is part of your journey. And I feel like with death there is a process, it's a cycle to complete. It's a learning experience. Uh, I in the past few years my concepts of and realities of death have shifted, but ultimately, I mean, I think I'm like a lot of people ready to get off this rock, but no time too soon. But
Yeah,
yeah,
as
as I
long
was saying, I mean, it's my week started Monday like that, and uh, it didn't like really hit me until like just a few moments ago that you were here. You were the one who saw Olivia Newton-John with me, and
yeah,
oddly enough, the Olivia Newton-John was my first concert I ever saw, but I didn't see. I remember I was 8 years old, 9 years old, driving up. It was a 2 hour trek to get there. And I remember sleeping in the back of the station wagon, like any '80s kid did. And then when we got there, was up for the show. But back in the early '80s, when entertainers did concerts and shows and stuff, they had these elaborate stage productions. Some of them had pyrotechnics and all this other stuff. So the stage production was so big, and I guess our seats were so cheap that the seats were pretty much on the back side of the stage. So that was my first concert I ever saw, but I didn't see. But I remember those, and over the course of the week I took some downtime and I played some games and listened to some tunes and reminisced, and it's like those songs all these years that I've just kind of had a tug to, those are the songs that I don't remember ever seeing, but I feel that music because I never was able to see the performance, especially on Tied Up, that flute part. I don't know. I can close my eyes and I can automatically go back to being 9 years old and hearing that flute play in that concert. And I've seen numerous concerts, numerous shows, but out of all of them, I have maybe two moments that I remember, and that's one of them. I mean, I was probably like a
Uh,
lot of
I,
impressionable, programmable young girls around that time when Grease came out. I was a Olivia Newton-John fan ever since I first heard "Hopelessly Devoted to You" from the Grease soundtrack, and I was
my
5.
Yeah, Grease came out actually the year I was born, so I kind of missed that one. But I do remember growing up, like my first exposure to Olivia Newton-John probably was the video for Physical. And, I was probably 4 or 5. I didn't really know what was going on, but it had a catchy beat to it, and I knew music, what was good and what wasn't back then. So I was like, oh, this is a hit.
Yeah,
And
that
then I went
was
back.
the biggest hit of 1981.
Yeah, that was
Or
number one for how many weeks? I want to say at least 4,
no, I thought it was
maybe
like
longer,
13.
which was a feat. Back in the 80s, it was so much competition to be on the top of the charts. I mean, if you got in the top 10, you were doing excellent.
Yeah, there were several video outlets I wouldn't even play the physical video. Let alone, and there were
I
radio
remember
stations
that.
that didn't want to play it either because of the connotation of the song.
Well, I saw a couple of videos that Olivia did towards the end of her life, and she was comparing that and saying how controversial it was when that song came out. And then she said that's a lullaby compared to what's out there today. That was the exact words that she used.
Yeah. She did do some movies outside of Greece. Um, she did Xanadu. What the
Yeah.
soundtrack
Yeah.
is totally the soundtrack is totally epic. It spans
Sound
multiple different kinds of musical genres. You have duets on there. She's got a duet with Gene Kelly, and there's
yeah.
a duet with the Tubes, which is a totally unique song itself because you have two different genres of music infused into a pop song.
Exactly. Then you had Yellow on there as well, which everybody knows that. Um,
Yeah, but ELO was. I mean, then you that the movie supposedly was horrible, even though I watched it. It was one of the first movies that I remember seeing in the theater. I begged and begged and begged to go to the movie, and then finally my parents were like, "Take her." And Tommy froze up on us.
Tommy did freeze up on us.
Yeah, sorry about the delay on that.
That's all right. He'll be
I
back.
got busy yarning. Yeah.
It's funny. I'm listening to you mention all this. I'm thinking, where was I? I was a bit older and doing different things when them come out, and I didn't pay too much attention. Oh, you lost him. Hopefully, he'll come back. Yeah, I didn't pay too much attention. I remember roller skating because we used to roller skate up the road where I lived. The roads weren't very busy, so you could roller skate on all of them, especially in the afternoon. And yeah, it was different for me anyway when that movie come out, Grease. I remember a lot of people looking like that and wearing them clothes and all that sort of stuff. Well, he's coming back.
Yay. Yeah, you were mentioning roller skating, and in the 80s, I lived to go to the roller skating rink. That was where I probably where I kind of got into early 80s music. I mean, 1982 in the early 80s, in my opinion, were some of the best for 80s.
Well, the roller
But
skating
yeah,
rink
no,
make
the movie that we were talking about movies, Xanadu, it flopped at the box office supposedly, but I think it was just ahead of it. I think it could be remade with like rollerblades updated, because the only thing that kept that movie dated were roller skates. I mean, because you had a muse that came. I mean, it the whole roller skates are what kept that movie dated. But again, probably just my opinion. And then there was the movie Twist of Fate, the other John Travolta movie with her, where their angels are like coming, they get one last chance to come back, but you have to make these two people fall in love. So it was a interesting movie. It was the last movie was Scatman Crothers. He plays one of the angels.
I remember that movie now that you say that, because he wasn't in too many of them.
Nope.
That and The
Apart from
Shining.
that, yep, and that know him from what was it? It was the Aristocats.
Yeah, he
He
was in
was one of the
that.
he was one of the Jazz Cats.
He was also in an animated movie, I want to say in the late 70s, that was kind of controversial when it came out. I can't think of the name of it right now, but he was in that.
No,
Uh,
I can't remember.
he was actually in that, and also he voiced a character in that.
Oh, I can't remember.
I can't either. I've got it on my computer because it's a classic, but it was controversial. It was definitely it was adult theme animation. Put it that way.
Cool. Yeah, so I'm looking and just like over the course of the week, just reminiscing the, and I didn't realize. I mean, perhaps celebrities do kind of leave an impression on you.
Well, I think
I mean,
you grow up
all
with them.
the yeah, all of the news articles and everything that I read, and all of her peers and those who knew her were all had nothing but praise. And if somebody can live their life like that, where they inspire so many, I mean, it's a fan. If I follow in somebody's footsteps like that, then that's inspirational.
You grow up with these celebrities, actors, actresses, musicians. In Olivia's case, she was an actor and a singer. So
Yeah,
she had two different forms of media that she put out there. And as you grow up, the movies and the songs kind of become the soundtrack of your life. You can pinpoint a particular song and recall an event, a life event that you had to associate it
yeah,
with it.
it's so true.
So when these people die, it's very sentimental and kind of traumatic because they've been a part of your life. And like I was telling you earlier, in Messenger, there's no artist to really replace these people. Uh,
No, and I mean, in a way, it kind of does feel like in the past week I have grown up like years.
there'll never be another Olivia Newton-John. Just in our culture and society right now, someone like her would never be.
No, I mean times have definitely shifted. More things have come to light as events and time move on, and the veil thins, and everything is one big kinetic onion.
And one thing that stands out to me about her, and you and I both met her, is when we met her in person, she had already done so much and got so many awards and everything. She was a bona fide superstar celebrity, but she came off to me as just humble, down to earth, like
Yeah,
literally girl next door type. And even though she had all of that fame, she still remained humble about it.
yeah. I mean, I wasn't starstruck. I was on the verge of it, but
Yeah, I know
the,
what you mean. Like, I thought I would be starstruck, but she made me feel at ease and just like she was just another person.
I mean, and the whole thing transpired. It's today is Luna's birthday, and I'm going to tie this in with another birthday. The whole meeting of Olivia Newton-John started over a birthday. I mean, I remember it. It was that birthday, and I was waiting for other friends to come over, and we were all congregating and getting together. And I was sitting outside back then when I was a heavy smoker and when the iPod was all the rage. So I remember having my cup of coffee, waiting for everybody to stir and congregate. And it was birthday morning, and I was out there randomly. Random song on iPod came on. Had my coffee. Olivia Newton-John came on. I heard the song, and it was one of those birthday wishes that you make to the universe. And my wish was is I wish I had the opportunity to see Olivia Newton-John again. And sure enough, 2 days later, that's when she announced a residency at Las Vegas. And then the more I thought about it, did the whole meet and greet VIP thing, and looking back on it as a kid from the 80s who went and literally met their childhood hero, those are priceless. And then to find out that she was just as genuine and wasn't fake or phony or anything, a real person, when there are so many corrupt people out there now, that's just I don't know how to feel other than gratitude for having somebody like Olivia Newton-John leave an impression on my life and become my life soundtrack.
Well, I think the stars of her era, generally speaking, most of them were down to earth and humble because in order to be a star back in those days, you had to really work and you had to be at the right place, right time, and just be lucky and get your breaks. And
Yeah, do you remember back in the day? And you're obviously male, so you may not have done this,
I
but
identify as
back in
male.
the 80s,
I identify as a
you know,
male.
back in the 80s, I mean, people would get those teen magazines, and in the back of it, they had like all the list of addresses where you could send mail to all these celebrities. And it was a common thing for I'm not the only one. I had childhood friends who did the same thing. You would like literally send a self-addressed stamped envelope to the address that was in that magazine of certain said celebrity, and you could correspond with them. Olivia Newton-John was the first fan letter I ever sent out to anybody, and I was like 9 years old when I opened the mail that was addressed to me, and I opened and there was an autographed picture of Olivia Newton-John.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, because you were a dude, and dudes probably didn't do that. But that was
No, we really.
a common thing in the 80s.
I mean, we knew of the teen magazines back then because obviously you hang out with your friends, and a lot of young girls had. I remember like Tiger Beat, and I don't. That was one prominent one, but
Yeah.
I remember a bunch of those teen mags because even back then you had the boy bands and stuff, and I remember like New Kids on the Block was in those teeny magazines, and I came across an article yesterday about Tom Cruise, and his manager had showed him that he was in a teen magazine, and he took the magazine and threw it at her because he didn't want to be identified as a teen idol.
Hmm. Well, he
So
was
I'm
all
just full of.
plastered up in magazines. The Outsiders. That was their way of that. Looking back on it, maybe that was their way of I mean, I guess looking back on it, I could have been programmed through those magazines.
Well,
I
I
mean,
think that.
that was so many huge Hollywood celebrity careers started with those magazines. They were helped
Yeah.
push, especially with the Outsiders.
But the thing is to be identified as a teen idol back in the 70s and 80s was kind of a double-edged sword, because if you were basically typecast as a teen idol, then it was very hard to make a transition to an adult star. And that's what a lot of them regretted and resented. I mean, you
I
had
could follow you. I follow you.
just thinking example off the top of my head, you had like Leif Garrett was teen idol and he just never broke out and as an adult star. Danny Bonaducci, you know, that speaks for itself.
True.
A lot of those teen stars just couldn't transition to adult roles, and it was a lot of them spiraled out of control and just got ate up by the Hollywood machine. 80s ones that come to mind that we're more familiar with would be like Corey Haim and what's the other Corey? Corey Feldman. Like they never really made it as an adult actors because they were just labeled teen stars, and that's the image they were stuck with.
Yeah. So I'll send you the article, but I know you're an 80s kid, and I know you know the Goonies.
Oh yeah, classic.
So I have some last month on the 26th of July, they discovered the beeswax wreck off the coast of Astoria in Oregon. The actual town where the Goonies movie takes place, where they search for that pirate ship. They found the actual pirate ship that the movie is based off of. It was a galleon headed from Portugal going to the West Indies, and it sank off the coast of Astoria.
Wow.
The Inferno was based off of a real ship, and they found it just a couple of weeks ago.
That is crazy. A lot of those Hollywood movies have some basis in truth.
But yeah, and again, that's a Steven Spielberg movie where there's
seems to do it a lot.
There's bits and nuggets of Spielberg truth in the Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skulls, and the first Indiana Jones, which was Raiders of the Lost Ark. There's bits of nuggets in E.T., also bits of nuggets in Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Exactly. Yeah, I was just thinking of all those.
I mean, it's coincidentally those are all his movies.
Yeah, he tended to put nuggets of truth in each movie that he did. Apparently, I think even with Close Encounters of the Third Kind, like he may have been persuaded or inspired by some CIA documents that I think were given to him or discussed with him, because the CIA is heavily involved in Hollywood scripts as well.
Oh yeah, still to this day they are.
You know, a lot of the movies are funded secretly and privately by them, and you would never know it.
So true. And I wonder how much. Well, I mean, the X-Files. They're the real life person who would be the closest thing to Fox Mulder. Luna, do you remember his name? He was on Captain's show frequently. What's on the tip of my tongue? Dr. Richard Allen or Doc Miller. Dr. Richard Miller, I think. Yeah, Doc Miller. That's what he did, and he's the closest thing to the real Fox Mulder. I mean, the stories that he's shared of Antarctica and what he's seen, just interesting.
Well, I always thought it was interesting with Antarctica that it's such a restricted place and only certain personnel are allowed to go there. You know, it's the only continent probably in the world that that level of security, and supposedly there's nothing there but ice. So makes you wonder what's really there.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder what truth is going to get out first, the whole Antarctica secret or the Atlantis secret.
I don't really know. Like, what are your thoughts on where Atlantis resides currently?
Um, I I speculate, and there's certain information that syncs up with this. That it's off the coast of in Cuba, over there in Cuba, in that region
So,
near
like
Bimini.
Bimini Road, which is what Edgar Casey
Yep,
said.
yep. Edgar Casey, Bimini Road. Um, a lot of stuff ties into that. Why that Atlantis region is so covered up and so secretive. I mean, you've
Yeah,
got Ghislaine Maxwell tied to it.
yeah. What was that? World Oceanic something? She was
Yeah,
sponsoring, or yeah, it's interesting link with her and that I found out a couple of months ago, and that kind of makes you scratch your head too on some stuff because she was heavily involved in getting that funded.
yeah. I mean, it's so I think people know, or I think there's more to that area in Atlantis than people are saying, because there's there on the other side of the world in the Philippines, there's people saying photographic evidence that land is coming up that wasn't there. So if it can rise one place, it could rise somewhere else. And in the Casey readings, I mean, it needs been specific, and so far the timeline he's given has been on point.
Edgar Casey was highly accurate. I mean, you're talking during his readings. Just off top of my head, I want to say his accuracy level was at least 90%. I mean, that's insane.
Yeah,
So you have to consider what he said because you can't just take it with a grain of salt. He was so accurate on so many things.
even the timeline, and he was specific when it would start to emerge, and coincidentally, right on time, that's when the Bimini Wall was discovered.
Yeah, it happened just like he said it would, and the exact time frame and everything. And then, I mean, what are the odds of that? He couldn't have made that up.
No, it's definitely interesting. Interesting.
But here's the
I mean,
problem.
the more I learn about Casey, and then going into the Eight Spear, and every day is an adventure.
But here's the problem with actually acknowledging places like Atlantis and even the land before that, Lemuria, is that the history books would have to be rewritten and our whole concept of human civilization would be turned on its head. And
Oh,
the,
absolutely.
the powers that be, they don't want to do that. They've got a nice little narrative that they've been pushing for centuries, and they don't want anybody to come along and tear things down.
Yeah, it's like last week, me and Luna were yarning on these out of place artifacts, and how they're just time that the narrative of our timeline is being proven to be way off. And so in some situations, I see that, wait a minute, we're this much older than that. And then there are some things I look at, and it's like they want us to believe that our civilization isn't that old. But it's definitely, I mean, now that the Sphinx has been excavated and you can clearly see the erosion, wouldn't that be an indicator that civilization is older than history books have given it credit to be?
Yeah, the erosion marks on the Sphinx are a clear indicator of water damage. And in order for it to have been water damage, you have to go back much further than what they said the Sphinx was built. because there was no water in that area. And the damage is telltale water damage. It's undeniable. But you've got these archaeologists with their heads in the sand, and they just don't want to admit the truth.
Well, I mean, I think that a lot of why we don't get the information that we know is out there is because it's kind of like the medical field, the medical complex. I mean, if you want to get money to fund your work, you have to get grants. And you're more likely to get a grant if you go by a certain narrative than another one. I mean, it's unfortunate, but that's how you get your work funded is you follow a narrative.
That and you've got regulators like the FDA, which they're not looking out for the public health's interest. They're looking out for corporate interest and telling a certain narrative on medicine. Because if someone were to come out with a cure for cancer, all natural, you would never. They would throw them in jail.
Yeah.
Current state of modern medicine, it's all about profit, and you don't actually want to cure the disease. You want to manage the disease, because if you can manage something, you can get more profit out of someone long term. If you cure it, it's a one shot deal and you're done. So all of these diseases, they like to keep in a managed state because it's more profitable that way.
Yeah. It's just the world has shifted. Things have just comparing 2 years ago, it feels like it's been 10 because there's just been so much change so fast.
Well, that and I saw the other day, the Earth is literally spinning faster now than it used to. So the actual time of the day now is shorter than 24 hours.
Yeah. I saw that I saw that. That's been going on for a while though. It's
Yeah,
just getting
and
faster.
it's spinning faster. They don't really know why. They want to blame global warming, and the polar ice cap melt is causing the spinning of the planet to be faster. It's a possibility. I wouldn't rule that out.
No, definitely seems possible.
Then you
But
got
we're also inch by inch slowly pulling away from the moon, or the moon's pulling away from us.
the moon's actually pulling away from us. I want to say like what 2 centimeters every year or something, and it's just gradually just gonna go out of our Earth's gravitational influence,
Yeah.
which that's going to be really bad. Hopefully we're not around then. It's not going to be pleasant on Earth.
No, I mean, but wasn't there Earth before without moon before?
There, I've seen some stuff
I,
about that.
I've heard, but I don't know much. I don't know much of the subject of the topic.
Well, yeah, there pretty much had to be an Earth before the time of the moon, because the moon was placed there. That's just my personal opinion, but the moon's an
That's
artificial
what
satellite.
but I've also heard that the moon was placed there. I mean, I heard there that it fractioned off from Tiamat, and then I've also heard that it was brought there from somewhere else. So it's a
The
lot of theories
last
out there, but it definitely seems too perfect to be not made to be
the
put there.
the last bit of information that I saw about the moon is that the moon is actually older than anything in our solar system. So it was probably placed there. It was dragged outside of the solar system and placed there by unknown entities, shall we say.
Gotcha.
But the distance from the Earth and then the distance from the sun with the moon is perfect. And the odds of that happening naturally in a random universe are astronomically impossible. It would not happen. So just the mathematics of where the moon is located, it shows that it was on purpose and intentional. And we needed the moon to stabilize our orbit of the planet and to generate the currents in the oceans. You've got high tide, low tide based on the moon's pull
True.
to and from. So the moon kind of is a stabilizer for the planet, and it allowed life to evolve and prosper. So without the moon, you wouldn't have these ocean currents anymore. So the oceans would basically just be stagnant and die.
Oh, without no moon, there'd be no pirates.
Can I jump in there?
Yeah, of course.
So, Tommy, my people are Aboriginal Australian people, and we have stories of before the moon came. So that says that there were actually people alive and things alive before the moon came. And when the moon came, we had to have certain laws in place. Like one of them is the women don't go out on a full moon by themselves because there's men in the moon that will come down and steal them. And when I heard that story, I was like, wow, well, that confirms a lot of things. So there was a time when the moon wasn't there and there was still life on Earth, and then the moon came, and then there were beings on the moon that came here, and obviously they're still in our women. They were either mating with them or experimenting one or the other.
Oh,
Or they wanted
wow.
us to slay.
That actually makes a lot of sense, because when there's a story, it's never been officially verified, but when Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin were on the moon, they switched over. Well, Neil Armstrong switched over to a medical channel for about 2 minutes, and supposedly said that they're here, they're at the edge of the crater, and they're watching us. So the story is the moon was already inhabited by the time 1969, and they went to the moon.
Yeah.
And NASA, of course, always denied that, and they said that it was just 2 minutes of silence. But he definitely switched over, and there were radio operators on Earth that was listening to the transmissions, and they claimed that it was something like that too. So there's probably a little bit of truth in that. And on the dark side of the moon, they always had these lights that they would describe as campfires that they could see on the moon, and they never did quite explain where those lights came from. So it's all sorts of weird structures and objects on the moon that haven't been explained.
Yeah, there is. I've done a little bit of research in that area. They were like crystalline buildings and things like that.
Yeah, I've heard of that too. And a lot of them have been destroyed over the centuries from asteroid impacts, and there's still remnants of it there.
And I imagine they'd be inside the moon, since it was towed there.
Yeah, the moon's hollow.
Yeah, they definitely know it's hollow, because they impacted some craft on it, and it rang like a bell for several hours.
So they'd be inside. But yeah, how I started out this, I knew stuff from my culture, and I wondered whether it correlated with anything else in the world. And you know what, it ticks every box. Every time I hear something, it's like, yeah, we got a story about that. That's true. We got a story about this. That's true. And other cultures too have similar stories. So regardless from today's media, news, scientists, and all that, the old cultures knew these things existed already, but the scientists need proof of their kind. But so they've been here for that long. That would mean they've just been here for that long. Why do we worry about them? Because if anything bad was going to happen, it would have happened by now.
Yeah, I believe that too.
Yeah, they've always been here.
Yeah. They've been here before we were here, and quite possibly probably had a hand in our existence, and they've just been watching us ever since.
Yeah.
That's what I'm leaning towards. is they had a hand in our existence, and it is what it is. I mean,
Yeah.
seems like we're the descendants of the Anunnaki.
You know, when I think about that, I think there was, how can I put it? Let's say there were some legal moves and there were some illegal moves in the galactic thing when they started experimenting on us. And I look at what's happening today and I see the same thing. They're illegally doing it again. You get what I mean? Right?
Yeah, they threw that treaty out a long time ago. I mean, I think there's a lot more to it than definitely than what everybody's being told,
Yeah.
and it's. I could go on for a salty rant, but it's all CIA controlled.
Because when you look at the past remnants, like even Atlantis and that, we knew there was more than Atlantis. There was Atlantis, Lemuria. There was a couple of them. That tells us there were cities around the world that lived in this harmonious way. And obviously they live with nature because a lot of them were built on the water. And to do that, it would have had to stay clean.
Yeah.
Not like what we do today. Anyway, something came. Honestly, from everyone I've spoke to that even looks at this stuff, it's one or two things. It's either a natural occurrence, like I'm talking about that blue plasma strike because it melted rock, right? Or it was a war occurrence from something else. It could be from the people that live in the moon. Who knows? But there was either some kind of weapon, or it was something from the sky that was like lightning, but hot enough to melt rock. Either way we look at it, it's one of those things, and the remnants are left behind. But I kind of think if it wasn't a weapon, that would explain why the harmony was interrupted in the world, and we just have remnants, and we live it.
No, you're speaking perfect sense to me in the sense that we had this alleged beautiful harmony, and then that kind of I think got disrupted when that weapon went off when it was the brothers of the Anunnaki battling, and I think that device went off, and I think that's where that came from.
Yeah, there was evidence.
That was they basically it was Mars. They basically destroyed Mars, and that's what the end result was. And then when they come to Earth, ironically, what's the Mars? There's something in Egypt that means Mars. I can't remember the connection, but there's something about Egypt and Mars that tie together.
Yeah, there's a I don't know, it was a city or something in Egypt that was linked to Mars. But the thing about Mars is they found radiation on that planet, and nobody really knows where that came from. But if they used some sort of weapon back then and it stripped off the atmosphere, that would make perfect sense. That would explain why it's radioactive to a degree, even to today.
Yeah, we have stories about the atmosphere, that we had giant trees and it made a double atmosphere. And when the larger people than us started cutting the trees down, all the water from that atmosphere fell here and caused a flood. And there's been more than one flood over the times, but that was one of the floods that it caused. And I like that story because it talks about the atmosphere above us. It was different then than it is to now because we haven't got large trees to make that same canopy. It was so large that other beings lived in there and they couldn't walk upon our world. That's another story we had. To say it was that different, it was like two worlds living together, and we lived in the underneath world and other things lived in the above world, and the air was different and the trees supported that. And when all the big trees got cut down, it changed. And I'm wondering whether we're doing that now, like that same version but mini again. So there's someone smaller than us that's going to come 1,000 years from now and go, they were giants, and there were all these giant trees.
Well, they did say during the time of the dinosaurs that it was a lot more oxygen in the atmosphere. So creatures and plants could grow larger than what they can today.
Yeah,
There was just
you would have a butterfly that would be the size of a school bus.
Yeah, there was a lot more oxygen in the atmosphere, which allowed creatures to grow exponentially large.
Yeah, from the extra oxygen. Some of them, we have remnants of them still. And I got this saying too, the dinosaurs, because as everyone knows, for some reason Australia's animals were like put in a bubble and didn't change like the rest of the world. Everything we have here was once very large, considered a dinosaur. Do you know what I mean? It just shrunk. Everything shrunk.
Mm-hmm.
We did have like a mountain lion thing. I don't know what happened to that. We got the dingo instead. But
But you guys have the platypus.
yeah, that's what I mean. So it's remnants of what was once.
And I did not realize up until recent years that the platypus is poison. It's poisonous.
It's got poison spurs.
Yeah.
But things were definitely different. The atmosphere was different. The people, everything in it was different. And we're witnessing the same thing. For a being that lived in the crossover, from watching all them big trees and the atmosphere change and the animals disappear, exactly what we're going through now, kind of. It's happened lots of times. We might go big again. Who knows one day?
This is true.
I do know something though. Our buildings and our technology is, excuse the French, is shit compared to the old world.
Yeah, I need to catch back up and catch the last of the. Oh, I think the guy's name was Damon Barry. The hidden knowledge of forever time, or however I'm butchering.
Yeah,
Definitely
I remember
the title.
I remember him, Jules.
Yeah, the way that he was able to like go down and break and show the technology we have now, they knew about it way back then.
Well, perfect example that still stares all of us in the face to this day are the pyramids. Even with modern technology, we cannot replicate a structure on that scale, even today.
No.
It makes you wonder, eh? But then I think, all right, if we were bigger and we had the same kind of like technology, it's doable. They were smarter, obviously, because we know we're going down the gurgler.
Yeah, and we're led to believe, or we've been told, well, I was in history books, that those structures were built with like primitive tools. I mean, primitive tools were chicken bone.
Copper tools.
Yeah, it was like what, logs and rope,
logs and twigs and chicken bones.
Yeah, like you're gonna lift some 1-ton block into the pyramid with just some logs and some rope.
I mean, giants perhaps could have built. They would have been tall enough to.
You know, and just the base of the pyramid is like 1/4 of a mile, and the accuracy from end to end, you'd have to have a laser level to have that kind of accuracy that it has, and you can't even slide a sheet of paper in between those blocks. That's how accurate they were.
Yeah.
I know that at one point the rocks were soft and you could mold them, and some of those rock walls, the way they bulge out is like they were soft and they just packed cubes on top of each other and then it set hard. Because we have stories about the ground being soft. We haven't got a story where everything flooded. We got a story about it rained a lot and the ground went soft and all the rocks were still soft, and there's fingerprints in the rock now, it's hardened up. And I thought, well, maybe that's what happened, how they built their walls. They were actually soft rock. And some places you can see scoop marks and handprints from giant ones, mind you, like the rock was soft, and that's what they did. They just scooped it out and shaped it and whacked it on top of each other, and then it hardened. And or they made some sort of polymer rock out of it.
Yeah, you've shown me some pictures of those rocks that have fingerprints in them.
In them, yeah. And we got stones here, and they're actually called something like clay rocks or plasticine rocks or something, because they look exactly like brown plasticine, light tan colour plasticine, and all of them look like they've been rolled by a hand or squished by a hand or something, and then it hardened up, and it makes me wonder.
Yeah.
I've actually got one here. Hang on, I'll show you. This is the one I keep because it fits in your hand, and the story on it, the story that when I looked at it, I sat there looking at it for hours. I looked like an idiot just staring at this rock, right? But what I saw was the story that was in the rock, and it was like a test piece. They had all this rock that was soft, and it was this colour, and like brown clay, right? And they scooped up a bit to see if it was ready, and one bloke held it and put his nail in it and thought, oh yeah, I think it's ready, and then handed it to another person, and they held it in a different way, and there's little prints there for them, and they went, yeah, it is ready, and then they put it down on the ground and left it there. That's what it looks like. And I'll just try to show you if you can see the little fingernail marks there.
Yeah.
Fingernail marks, and then on this side, if you put your fingers there, like
Yeah,
someone squashed with their fingers. Yep, and you hold it one way like that, and it kind of got squashed. Oh yeah, it's ready. And then pass it to another person, and they kind of squash the other area. That's what it feels like. And then they've just dropped it down, and it's all flat on one side.
Yeah.
But it's definitely got fingernail marks in it. You can see that. It's hard.
I mean, another out of place thing that's on the timeline of events with the whole debate of dinosaurs in the Bible. There were, but they weren't called dinosaurs. They were called terrible lizards.
Yeah, and
So I mean, if there were dinosaurs back in that time, which on that timeline you hear dinosaurs being extinct for millions of years, and then you're only talking thousands of years when you talk about the book.
in the book of Genesis, when it was translated, there is a particular word that they use in there that now people believe they were referring to dinosaurs in the beginning of time. I want to say it was Leviathan.
Well, see, I always thought when they were talking about Leviathan, they were talking about the sea serpent.
It basically meant just a general term for what we would consider dinosaurs today, like large lizard type creatures, which, probably is what they would describe them as. You had the ancient stories of all these dragons across the world, the Chinese dragons, the British dragons. South America had dragons. In the Mexico area, there was dragons. How could all of these different cultures across the world that were supposedly separated, never communicated with one another, come up with the same creature?
And that I can't tell you. I can't give all the details on that because it's a story that I don't have all the words for. But again, last week I yarned about YouTube and things, and how, because last week me and Luna were talking about the floods. We were talking about mystery history and how things are hidden, and we're discovering things, and how the timeline seems off. And we were talking about floods and how it seems like every pantheon has one. And I think I just derailed myself. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that just don't fit. There's a lot of missing space.
Well, the idea of dragons is universal. Every culture has uh, ancient history of dragon lore.
Yeah.
So
So
was this a real creature? And think about it: if humans back then saw what we consider a dinosaur today, that's a dragon. That would have been a dragon to them.
yeah.
And obviously, you know, in British lore, they hunted the dragons, and they probably hunted them until extinction, and they just disappeared off the planet.
We got goannas that you class as dragons today. They're huge. We got lizards that are huge. Another day I saw in the Amazon, someone went to do something. The helicopter went down, and they looked and they thought they saw a snake. And as they went down, they took a photo. The snake actually jumped up to bite the helicopter. It was that big. It missed them, obviously.
Wow.
They took the photo and left. But that's what I mean. Them dinosaurs were just large versions of what we have now. Left over.
I know. So I was reading, and I still need to finish this book. I'm so close to finishing it, but I get delaying myself. But in the Stage of Time, it goes into the Sumerian and Babylonian creation myths about the Anunnaki and a whole bunch of other sequences, and how everything's just one giant puzzle piece is being put together. But this book also talks about the symbolism of the eagle and the serpent, and how the serpent wasn't always depicted as being evil and bad, and it became to be that way. But because the dragon, the snake, the serpent was so revered, that's when it spread, and you have all these different areas associated with reptiles and dragons. Like you would have your country flag, your family crest. If you were an older family, you would likely have this because that's where your origins came from. And even back in the days, I want to say it was Saint Patrick when he became a saint for driving the snakes out of Ireland. He wasn't driving literal snakes out of Ireland. He was driving away the people, because the serpent represented knowledge and wisdom, and those were the people the druids that lived off the land, that took care of the earth, that were in tune with nature, spiritual beings. They were the ones that were driven away. Those were the serpents that St. Patrick was clearing out of Ireland. Not necessarily the actual snake, but the people that it represented.
Well, think about in the book of Genesis where you had Adam and Eve, and Eve is seduced into eating the forbidden fruit by a serpent. You know, and modern depictions say an apple, but it probably wasn't an apple. My research said it was something more like a pomegranate or something.
I've always come to the conclusion it's a pomegranate or a persimmon.
Yeah, something that would have been native to that
area. I say persimmon because persimmon is it's the closest thing that could resemble an apple, looking like an apple.
I actually heard a different story. I heard that a so-called angel was supposed to be looking after her in the garden, and she was not to be left unguarded, and she was left unguarded, and the apple represented her virginity, and that's how she ended up having Cain and Abel. One was to Adam, and the other one was to this other angel dude that tricked her. Because she went back to him to show him what she'd learned. Yeah, kind of like that. But you got to remember that Adam got his first wife pregnant, didn't like her, and then pissed her off and kicked her out into nothing.
Yeah,
that was
nobody talks about Lilith.
yeah, Lilith was the first wife, and she wanted to be equal to Adam, and he resented that.
She must have been Aboriginal because us women are equal to how many? She might have been black. I don't like that she's black. She wants to be me equal. Give me someone else. I heard a story about that too. The first actual being they offered him was a hairy woman, you know, Bigfoot, Yowie, Sasquatch woman, and he didn't like her because she was too hairy.
Hmm.
And then
I mean, and that's where I kind of on putting that in with the knowledge that I'm getting from this book and previous knowledge. It's highly possible we were here prior to creation of man. I mean, if we were here and we were hairy and people came and tinkered and made us just right, and over the course of time we evolved and we lost our need for hair.
Well, here's the thing too. Going back to the Anunnaki legends, is when the Anunnaki supposedly created humans, they were all sterile, and the Anunnaki women had to carry the human babies until childbirth.
Yeah,
So
I've come across that too.
right.
so you probably had I don't know about Lilith, but definitely Eve probably was the first human that could actually carry a human child to term. So it was the beginning of the procreation of man without any help, because the Anunnaki women no longer had to carry the human children.
You know, I never actually thought that about Lilith.
Yeah, then what happened to Lilith? We know that she was pregnant and she had a child.
She supposedly ran off into the forest, and then she became basically this demon. And the story became that if you had a child and the child died, then Lilith came and took your child, and she became basically an evil entity, is how they wrote her off.
Yeah, I know, because when you think about it, if you were in her shoes and your partner got you pregnant and then didn't like you because you wanted equality and then kicked you out and got someone else, you'd be pretty disgruntled.
Yeah. And then, of course, they took one of Adam's ribs to make Eve from, which, if you think about that technologically,
cloning.
the marrow in Adam's rib is what they used to clone and use the DNA from his rib to create Eve.
Yeah, so Eve was cloned from Adam. So Lilith must have been some entirely different being, right? Not of Adam.
She was supposedly made from the same clay that Adam came from, which is why she argued that she was equal to Adam, because she came from the same clay of him. So she basically made an argument that she was equal, and Adam just didn't. He wasn't having that. He thought that he was the first male and he was superior, and probably the first male chauvinist, I guess.
Yeah,
it seems it.
It's basically he's king of the castle and my way or the highway.
Yeah, exactly. Wow, that explains a lot. That explains a lot about the world too, and how there's different people. So I wonder what happened to her and the world she went to. I know for a fact that when they made Adam, there were other beings and living beings around, because a lot of us and we said, which means there wasn't just one being there was many, and there was already existing beings on Earth, because I don't want to bring color into it, but it was Adam black, because there's root races and they were all brown skinned people.
Well, interesting, in this book that I'm reading, again, same book, and he gives a very good argument for not necessarily one atom, but 5 atoms.
Whoa.
And if there were 5 atoms, I kind of can see where, if that would be the 5 atoms would be, you have the Egyptian pantheon, the Greek pantheon, you have all these different pantheons that are similar stories. So
5 atoms. That
it's,
sounds like.
it's diverse and it's complex and it's a brain bender, and it's just everything again is kinetically
Well,
kinetic onion.
here's probably going to be a brain buster for you, Jules, is that supposedly the consensus is that most extraterrestrials are actually dark skin or black skin in nature. The only ones you really have that are the fair skin would be the Nordic extraterrestrials, but the common ET is basically like black, like African origin.
Wow.
I'm not surprised.
And that's something that they don't really talk about a lot, because then that gets into areas of racism and
Right.
and
Well,
all of that. No one, majority of society would not want to admit that they're black aliens.
Well, I mean, no, and I mean, I can logically, the way that I'm processing that, it's like I don't doubt it, because whether you subscribe to the out of Africa theory or the out of Australia theory, those were predominantly black people, and if they came from the stars, it makes perfect sense that they're the offspring of celestial beings.
Yeah, and then you take into account where the Garden of Eden was supposedly located, like between the Tigris, Euphrates, and there was one other
Yeah,
river. There was all
that's in the
three of them.
Middle East.
That's in the Middle East. There would not have been a white Adam or white Eve. They had to have been at least dark complexion.
Brown skin, that had sun protection.
Even the concept of Jesus being white, that's ridiculous. Jesus would not have been. He would not have been white.
I think Mary was Ethiopian, from what I heard.
Yeah, they were dark complected people, and
but Noah was a albino. Did you know that?
Who?
Noah.
Yeah, they said Noah's skin actually glowed.
Yeah, he was an albino.
He had glowing skin and he had blue eyes.
Yeah.
And his father actually doubted that was his son, and he went to his father Methuselah and asked him, what should I do with this child? I don't believe that this child is mine. And Methuselah was an old man at that point anyway. I mean, it's the story on him is he lived for hundreds of years. And he told Noah's father to accept him as his son, and he would basically be the beginning of a new human race, which Noah was.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, in that ties in with the Sumerian creation and the Astrahasis. That's the account. That's the account that, and that works. Noah is Astrahasis, and that's where in that Illumina. I can't think of the right word. The Enuma Elish tells that account of the flood from Astrahasis, aka Noah.
And the purpose of the flood too was to wipe out all of these cousins of humanity that were human, but they weren't quite human like we know today, like Homo sapien. Yeah, they were giants. They were giants in Noah's time. And the flood wiped out a great deal of them. I don't think it wiped out all of them, but it wiped out a good percentage of them.
Yeah, because in our stories, we have giants. Like, we're not far from where I live. There's a well-named giants camp. There were giant grinding stones and all that's there, stuff like that. So we had giants, and I wonder where the fuck did they go?
Yeah, majority of them died in the flood. And the purpose of that was if the current version of humans didn't have the flood, we wouldn't have survived, because the giants would have overtaken us. We were just too small. They were cannibals. They were eating humans.
Yeah, I've thought about that. Actually, you think about it though, when you look at it from our point of view. I noticed you got little critters in a container behind you, and I'm thinking, wow, imagine if that was humans and the giants had us in a container. And then I thought,
Well, the
Christmas
story of the
chickens and
giants
stuff like
is
that,
one of the
yeah.
oldest stories ever known.
And
Well,
we eat
yeah,
chickens and
going
quail.
back to that story, Jules, you know that the story of the origin of the giants was that it was interbreeding between the Watchers with human women that created these giant
Yep.
beings, the Nephilim.
Yep.
Yeah, they were what was it? That was the platoon of soldiers that were sent down to guard us, and they couldn't help themselves. When it's
Yeah, I
Oh
mean,
yeah, you
I've
know
always
they were
had an
supposed to
interest.
watch us. They were supposed to watch over us, but then they got a little too involved.
yeah, what is it?
Yeah,
The
I've
Prime
always
Executive?
had an interest in ever since my exposure to the Book of Enoch. I, and I'm reasons why certain books are canons are left out of the Bible, and Enoch is obvious reasons there.
Actually,
And
that's something in our culture I haven't found, is when you talk about the Watchers and all that. I haven't found anything like that. We have other beings that we were taught to be careful of, because some liked us and some didn't, and they might cause mischief. But I haven't actually found a story that would fit that story. I'll have to dig a bit deeper, maybe.
Yeah, well, I mean, and I had not too long ago, I had this. I don't know what I was reading or how it popped in my mind, but I got to thinking the whole archangel, and then how so similar Archon is to
Yeah,
Archangel.
yeah. And I know there's, because of language, there's a misconstruence between what they say, like them or the Anunnaki, Archangel. There's a crossover in language that we're getting wrong, and I think we got the wrong
Well,
names, the wrong mobs.
yeah, and I think Anunnaki means something like those who fell from the sky.
Oh, and Anunnaki, isn't that anarchy?
those that those
Very similar.
those that came from the sky.
And anarchy is rule thyself, right? You in proper manner, and maybe that Anunnaki were like that too. You rule yourself in a proper manner. Who knows?
The story with them is they were a warrior race, and of course, you
Yeah.
know they had battles amongst themselves. You had Enlil and Enki, which were brothers that were vying for power.
Yeah.
Enki was the one that supposedly tinkered with the primates on Earth and made the modern human being.
Funny. Oh, I
Yeah,
remember.
he had help. He had help from mommy.
I remember having this dream when I was a young girl, and it never made sense to me until I grew up. And it kind of still doesn't. But I'll tell you what the dream was. So there was human beings, and I was there. Like, I was one of the human beings. I was a female. There were males, and there was a group of us, probably about, I don't know, 7, 8 of us. And they brought us up from an underground place, and it was like a hatch. And they brought us up through this hatch onto the ground, the earth. And it was obviously very, very old times, because there were really big trees and stuff like that. But when I looked at the being that was holding us or looking after us, whatever, all I could see was like a giant pupa of an insect. Right, that's what dream. That's what it was. It was like some sort of insect pupa thing with 2 legs. Right. Anyway, I looked at the people as we were all climbing out of this hatch and looking around, and I had this bright idea to escape. And I remember putting my arms around this insect creature thing and wrestling it and throwing it to the ground, and then running off into the nature and these giant trees and stuff. But what happened as I ran off and I was near these trees, a big hairy arm, it was like a giant hairy man, come down and picked me up. And that was it. That was the end of the dream.
Oh wow.
It was a really out of place dream, I'm telling you. The only place I could place it back to was that must have come back to what we're talking about, when they experimented on us, or they created Adam, or so. I don't even know if it was me, and they just put me there to observe what happened. You know what I mean? That's what they showed me.
One of the theories was that the Garden of Eden was actually a lab, and it was
Oh, there you go.
it was basically just big lab. It was a controlled environment, and
Underground.
that's why Adam and Eve's needs were taken care of. They didn't have to want for food or anything because it was all provided for them because it was a controlled environment. It was secluded from the natural world.
Yeah, right. I remember when they let
Oh,
them.
there were some recently declassified documents that pertain to the Garden of Eden.
Probably.
I'll have to see if I can find them this weekend.
They've kept truth from us for so long. Creators decided to let the truth grow in all the various ways we find it out. They can't handle the truth anymore. Literally, it's come out of the box and they can't put it back in. But finding what's actually, they try to misguide us all the time. That's why I go back to old cultures, because their stories were handed down specifically for remembering of the old times. Old, there's that word again, old. So there is truth in them for sure. They haven't been adulterated. You know what I mean? And so I start from that base and then grab the stories that have been adulterated and try to pull the matching truths. And they're the ones I go with because it's lasted through time. The rest of it, I don't know.
But you have like ancient cave paintings of creatures that are insect-like, and that could tie back into your dream that you had as well, because it probably is a race of insectoids that had some influence or meddling in human evolution.
Yeah, because I actually had another dream not long after that, and it was about an Aboriginal man and woman, and they stole their baby, and the Aboriginal woman said to the man, "They're up the mountain. The ones who stole them live up the mountain. Go up there and get it." And everything was all bush, so there was, it was a very long time ago. So this fellow went up the mountain, and as he got up towards the mountain, he realised they had some form of camouflage. So the mountain was actually a laboratory, but it looked like a mountain from the outside. But as he got closer, you could see it was just a camouflage thing. So he goes in there, and there were all these babies in, like, them humicrib things, capsule things, with the
Well,
seeds at the top. There are all these babies from all different countries in these little capsule things, and he saw his baby, the Aboriginal baby. So he pinched his baby and grabbed it and ran away. And at the end of the dream, they said that's why your people still have a connection, because that man took that baby long, long, long time ago, right? It's probably things have changed now, but that was just a dream I had around about the same time as the other dream when I was young. But now it makes more sense to me, because back then I'm like, a laboratory in the mountain? Like, but now I understand, the technology that they had was advanced. They had these things. They did muck around. And these babies had spots all over them, by the way. All the babies, there was an Asian baby, a black baby, an African baby, a white baby. There were all these different babies, but the only baby he took was the Aboriginal baby. And I think that's what they'll show me. There was some interference in the past.
Well, you have stories, of, what was it, the Cerberus with the two-headed, three-headed dog. You got the Chimera story. You've got all these creatures that were basically a blending of different creatures, like lions' heads and eagles' wings, and a lot of that can be explained.
We were just talking about sirens last night.
Yeah, I thought
we were talking about sirens last night and how they have wings, human body, human face, wings, feathers. They were an amalgamation of things.
Well, think about mermaids, a combination of human and fish. I mean, that if you have the technology, you can have something possible like that.
Oh, we were talking about merfolk last night, and Tommy, your thoughts? I mean, I speculate that Atlantis had merfolk.
Yeah, the stories back then, tend to corroborate that, and the legend that the mermaids came from what is that Greek god? The Greek god of the sea, Poseidon.
Poseidon?
Yeah, the mermaids and mermen were children of Poseidon.
that wouldn't surprise me because I know that some of them aquatic creatures don't come. They're from somewhere else.
And what was it, like last year or the year before? Scientists actually admitted that octopus are more than likely not from this planet.
Yep.
They
Yeah.
don't. They don't. The DNA of an octopus matches nothing on the planet, and their level of intelligence and their abilities, nothing in the ocean comes close to that.
I know that there's two beings in this world that have more of a copper-based blood than an iron-based blood, and the octopus is one of them. And people that have that, what's it called, RH negative,
RH
That-
negative blood, yeah.
they got similar, or I should say, we got similar blood, but we're supposed to have copper water instead of silver water. Because
Yeah.
we've got copper more in our body. So that tells me that's another strand altogether. And that's what I mean. Some of them aquatic creatures, they're not from here, man. Especially the octopus. They're from somewhere else, another place that was like.
I wonder if other cephalopods are from other places. That would be the squid.
Yep.
They're in the same family.
When you look at it that way, yeah, there's a lot. It's like most of the aquatic creatures. Yeah, some of them are just not.
I mean, the squid is the squid and the octopus. They both use ink as a escape mechanism.
Yeah.
Then the
And
octopus has
if
camouflage.
there's bipedal beings on dry land, obviously there's bipedal beings under the in the water. And I reckon that the mermaids and that they're just another species of beings. They just live in the water. Yeah,
Well, I think some of them live on land.
I think they can do that too. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean,
how they come
logically, think of the Pope, the mitre hat,
Yep.
and how it has that fish logo on it.
Yeah.
So if merfolk did exist, and over time they evolved, and they evolved to be land people, the people that would be distantly related to the merfolk now would be those Dogon. They were the Dogon tribe, the Dogons who became the papacy. Those were the papacy. If they are descendants of those original people from way back when. I mean, that's where I could kind of see a bloodline relation there.
Yeah, I got a feeling that illegally they've mishmashed all that together, and that's why we're all got different traits and that from those different things. It's been like an ongoing experiment since they came.
And think about this: it's probably more than one extraterrestrial race out there. So if you've got 16, 17 different ETs coming to the planet and messing with our DNA, that would explain why you have white people, black people,
Exactly.
in between people, because all of these extraterrestrials probably are different colors themselves.
Yeah.
Actually, I've got to say something about extraterrestrial because that word actually means extra is more, terrestrial is land, and it says they come from more land, which they're hiding from us. So because if I got in a vehicle in Australia that you'd never ever seen before and flew to America and landed in your backyard, you'd think I come from the sky. So if I come from land, you don't know, that's a long, long, long way away. And I use a vehicle that you don't know the technology of, and it might take me, I don't know, a couple of years to get here because it's a long way. And fly here, you'd think I was an alien, but I'm not actually an alien. I just live in extra land that's far away. And we have different technology and we look different.
And that's how, back in ancient times, humans didn't have the concept of a jet plane or a spaceship. So they would say a metal bird in the sky or a dragon in the sky, because think about it, a rocket would have fire and smoke. It would appear to be a dragon.
Yeah.
So they were relating to things in their time, birds and different descriptions that they could describe it with, because it was technology that they didn't understand.
Yep, I agree. And sometimes I think too that You know how we have shooting stars, comets, and that. I know there's vehicles that are spheres, and when they hit the atmosphere, they look like something's hit the atmosphere and it's burning up like a rock, but it's actually a vehicle because it's like a round rock, kind of. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So, but following the previous thread of how each particular race is different color, then that line that Ben was created in his image, then it totally makes sense that why some people would be created different. Each particular one had their own particular creator. They were made according to their creator. That's why everybody is different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that would explain all the different religions too, because they were all different. Or either that, or they just kept reincarnating and appearing all over the place. No, but I heard that story. I heard that's why we look all across the world. We look different, is because they put some of them in us, and then we mixed ourselves up after that. But you know, it's been a long time that all these things have happened in.
Yep.
That and a lot of knowledge has been lost to the past.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very hard to get that knowledge back if you can get back just little slivers of it here and there, because I don't think we'll ever truly get the full story because so much has been lost through time.
Not unless the
well, I think a lot of it has purposely been lost through time.
Well, I know there's certain places in the world where they have these underground libraries, let's say, and the evidence is all there. They know all about it. They've got pieces of evidence that prove it and tell about it, and they've taken it from us. Yeah, they won't let us see it.
They just found, I was reading yesterday, Jules, they just found a underground tunnel that goes all the way from Scotland to Turkey underground.
Yep.
You know what?
That trail, that tunnel also connects with tunnels that start, I want to say, in Australia, because there was a lot of mining going on, and I speculate that those tunnels all connect because that was ancient days when they were mining gold.
The gold that we all have an affinity to. Why do we love gold so much?
It's the spiritual resonance, what it does to your body and spirit. That's what it's supposed to be for. It's not supposed to be a money orientated thing. It's supposed to be given to everyone so they can spiritually and grow and physically heal. That's what it's for.
Yeah, I mean, it's rumored that all those ancient Anunnaki, why they may have needed it for their planet, as that legend goes, but it's also possible they lived such long lives that they consumed gold, that monotonic gold in their diet.
They had a complete recipe for the monatomic gold, and it extended their life.
Yeah, I heard it's a milky white substance, and there's all these different stories that say they were having this milky white drink. They thought it might have been milk or some concoction, but it's monatomic gold, and
now
it goes milky white.
The interesting thing, that substance, could that also be tied to ambrosia, which is what the drink?
I was just thinking the same thing. The ambrosia.
We did our study on ambrosia. Ambrosia gives off a golden hue. It's gold, not white.
And supposedly the gods drank that to live for eternity.
Yeah, I think they had a few different things. They just not tell.
Well, the technology. I mean,
because you had the healing places. Yeah, you had the rocks and all that with the vibration.
You're talking about living beings that were probably thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of years ahead of humans. So
Yeah.
Anything that
Yeah.
anything that they had would be like magic to us.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Which
then, you know how they had them little little bags with the acorn in their hand? I keep
Yeah.
saying to them, that's a mobile laptop with a mouse. Like the thing in the hand was what controlled it. They could
I've seen
program
that
and
on some
control
hieroglyphs.
it.
They had that on there,
Yeah.
and
And there's even the mirrors in the old paintings. They reckon were like communication things, like our phones.
well, they had some depictions in South America, like Quetzalcoatl, and he's in a rocket ship, and you can see that he's clearly in some kind of technological device, and he's got his feet on the pedals, and he's got these tubes going to his nose, which probably was for oxygen.
Yeah.
And he was basically descended and ascended in a flying dragon. It was a ship. It was a craft that he had.
Yeah, definitely. He would have been larger than us too.
Yeah, and he came down and he taught the ancient people technology, math, and science, and shared what he could to help them evolve as a race. So you have a lot of these aliens that basically were trying to teach humanity, for better or worse, because some of them taught things that they probably shouldn't have, and that's
Yeah, I agree.
And that
that's when you get
you're
into.
talking about
I'm talking
that
about.
was Inky,
I'm talking
the
about the
serpent.
Watchers. I'm talking about the Watchers, and you get into like Azrael and Azeroth and Satan and all of them. They basically were teaching humans how to create weapons, how to make metal objects and incantations and spells and magic, and they got into that realm with humanity, and that was
And
actually
they taught them how to wear makeup as well.
yeah, and
You're
all of
talking
that
about
stuff.
Azazel.
Yeah, and all of that was supposedly forbidden, but you had a group of those fallen angels that taught man anyway.
Interesting conversation.
Always is, Jules. You
I
know
could.
that.
I mean, we've been going for a hot minute, but this is the kind of conversation that I lose track of time in. So if you guys need a break or if you're tired or whatever, just like I'm a lady of leisure, and I'll yarn as long as you guys are up for it. Because I have recently caught up with the banned book of Thomas, and in that one goes over the story of how Jesus had the supernatural ability when he was a boy, and he had the power to kill, but also had the power to bring him back.
Yeah, like story of Lazarus. That's classic story of bringing a man back to life. He definitely wasn't human, or at least entirely human. There's a story of the Last Supper, which Judas speaks up and he says, "I know who you are," or "I know what you are." And he probably was he was probably the disciple that actually knew what Jesus was. And then they basically vilify him in the scriptures, and he basically sold Jesus out for a couple pieces of silver. But yeah, the thing with him,
I didn't grow up reading the Bible, so when I hear these stories, I'm entertained.
well,
I felt
it was required reading in my high school, so I wouldn't have normally picked that book up to read it, but yeah, we had to read the Bible, and we also had to read the Quran, which talks a lot about the jinn and their influence in the world, and how they came to be, and a lot of the stories in the Quran and the Bible parallel each other in similarity. They have a lot of similar stories.
Yeah.
They both contain stories of the flood. Um, it's a lot of similarities, even though if you speak to one or the other in those religions, they don't like each other, but they have a lot in common that they just, I guess, not willing to admit to or come to terms on that
Yeah,
common
and
ground.
that makes me think of my 5 atom theory. I mean, it not just one, multiples of them, because you have those same stories that echo through like Egypt and Greece. They all had many similarities, even the flood.
Yeah, it pretty much was like a universal ancient story of the flood. Every old civilization has a story of a flood in the world.
So, in my diabolical mind, I'm thinking, since all the timelines are just jumbled up to hell and back, what if all these timelines were happen simultaneously? I mean, it's recorded in history that there are different periods and they obviously couldn't have existed at the same time. But if they've altered timekeeping of history, what if multiple things did actually overlap and there was only one flood, but somehow over the course of time it became from different regions?
See, time is a tricky thing because
Oh, I
time
agree.
time doesn't even exist. The past, present, and future all happen simultaneously. Time is an illusion that serves a purpose. Albert Einstein.
Yep.
Um, we basically have clocks to keep our consciousness looking forward because we think of time as one way, but that's not necessarily the case. Time is just an illusion that it has a purpose in this world. It's how we relate to things being new, current, or old, and it's easier for our minds to wrap around that concept.
True, but it also serves a purpose for our overlords. I mean, without time, we can't go to work.
There's only 2 times I know. One's dream time and the other one's blackfella time. And none of them keep with the clock. Yeah, it definitely has become a slave tool. I heard that when the English went to China for the first time, the emperor said, "I've got something special to show you," and he takes him to this room, and underneath this cloth is an old clock. And they said, "Why don't you use it?" He goes, "What for?" Oh, I was going to make a pun then and go, "It's a waste of time."
Well, I mean, the earliest clock, the sundial, it was only used during those hours. You could only track time when there was sun.
Because the sun is supposed to be your clock. Because them days that are longer in the year than some of the others, if you go by the clock, that you don't even know what's happening because you're not going by the sun, and you'd have a shorter day at work.
Yeah.
Which is a problem.
Yeah, then they came and they messed everything up with daylight savings time.
Well, think about probably one of the easiest things you can relate to time is if you partake of a book, Jules, your concept of time changes. And you know what I mean by book.
I do.
If you read a really good book, time appears to slow down.
Know what a book is too.
If you get a really good book, I mean,
it's the only book you can get from the greengrocer.
Exactly. your concept of time, you could be sitting there and thinking yourself like, God, I've been here for 8 hours and it's only been 8 minutes. So your perception of time can be altered. How should I say? Medicinally.
Yeah, I
Yes.
get what you're talking about. Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah.
Spiritually.
Yeah, spiritually. You know, something that
Spiritually, because it was Bob Marley who once quoted, "When you smoke, you reveal your true self to yourself." And that statement is like you become one with yourself.
well, in a way, to me, I've always felt like I become one with the universe.
Yeah.
You know, it's an overwhelming euphoric feeling, and you feel as one with everything.
Yeah. I mean,
And
and that's where they say that we're all universal consciousness.
and that's what everyone says that has these near death experiences is they go through the tunnel, they see the light, and they feel one with everything, and everything is connected. We're not separate beings. We're all interconnected together as one consciousness.
Yep.
So it's like we're an extension of the universal God, which is above all of them. Not the little gods that the ancients just, thought were gods, but they were actually alien beings. But to them, they were gods. But even they have a God that they have to answer to.
Yep, I've always said that, Tommy. Even the aliens have got to answer to Creator.
Yeah,
Yep.
because I think any intelligent being has to have some spirituality to them. Humans at a core level, we're spiritual beings. We need spirituality in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
I would agree.
I agree 1,000%.
Yeah,
Obviously, otherwise it wouldn't be here. It'd be wasting
spirituality
time.
is what gets you through hard times.
Mm.
It is. It's like an innate ability that we have. It's like even if you weren't brought up taught about God or Jesus or anything like that, you still would have a part of you that would be spiritual because it's an innate ability. You're born with it.
Yep, and I've seen people when they get to near death, they might not have believed in anything or bothered even to practice anything, but when their time comes and they got to cross over to spirit world, the first thing they call out is God. I like to use Creator because there's little G's and I don't like to get them mixed up. So.
Yeah, there's a ton of videos actually on YouTube of people that have been atheists all their lives, and then they have a near-death experience and they go to God, and when they come back, they change their entire spirituality. It's night and day difference of what they thought and what became.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So
I know a lot of people that don't believe in anything, but they're always seeking other people's that are spiritual answers.
yeah, I think whether people are atheists or not, when you die, you will find out that there is another side.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter what you believe in this world because there's absolute truth in the universe, and one of them is you become a spiritual being.
And I tell people it's not like you see in the movies. That is such a distraction because ever since I was young, Tommy, I could see spirits, and those people that are passed over that might have had an accident and all bloody, they don't turn up looking like that. They turn up in what I call our beautiful selves. And I've seen a lady who lost the use of her legs, and when she passed over, she came dancing and told me to tell her brother that I can dance now. I'm so happy, and she showed me herself dancing, and it's always their beautiful self. And if you ask them how did you die, they will show you what happened to them. They'll show you the accident or the illness and that, but they don't turn up that way. They turn up beautiful.
Yeah, you transition over into your perfect being as a spirit because your spirit is whole, whereas your physical body, you can lose a leg, you can lose an arm in this reality, but spiritually you remain whole. Your spirit cannot be cut up and destroyed.
No.
I often wonder, Tommy, that
Go ahead, Luna.
sorry, is there a room somewhere on another vibration where we're all sleeping and thinking that we're alive?
Well, you're supposed to, what Jules and I have discussed before, to increase your vibration, to increase your conscious level and your spirituality. And a lot of the religions
I always
talk about that.
I've come to the conclusion on my path, and things may change, but for the longest time, this has been pretty solid, that I feel like we were created in a God's image or a creator's image. We are immortal. We reincarnate time and time again in a different physical form, but we're still part of that collective consciousness. We're immortal. Our time here that we come here, we're only here for X amount of time, and then we do whatever, and some of us choose to come back. Maybe out of boredom or maybe out of a mission, but we're immortal. What else are we going to do other than reincarnate and do things? And we just seem to be trapped in this third, lower density dimension that keeps us here. If we can raise our vibration and break that, maybe we won't have to come back.
But is there a purpose to come back, though? Because as a soul, maybe you didn't learn or you evolved in previous lives, and the purpose of continually coming back is to evolve spiritually at the soul level, and you keep coming back until you're fully evolved.
I mean, I agree, but I also feel like some of us have come here. I can't speak for everybody, but there's a collective group here that we were destined to meet because we're part of a soul family. We're a soul tribe.
Because you have a lot of people that are not good people. They're bad. They're what we would deem evil. And they keep coming back because they're given free will. You can choose to be good or you can choose to be evil. That's perfectly up to you.
This is true.
It's your choice. But if you continually choose to be evil, you're given a second chance to right that wrong in another lifetime. And some souls may learn, other souls may never learn. And at the end of time, that's when they get cast in that proverbial lake of fire, and they just cease to exist because they were given countless opportunities to evolve, and they just never chose to do it.
True. I mean, there's part of me that I would like to do a regression and learn about some of my previous lives and experiences. And there's part of me that doesn't want to. I mean, it would be interesting to know, but I feel like it may be a burden of knowing.
Well, here's the thing.
Carrying extra baggage.
When you in this life and you pass over, you're going to know every other lifetime that you had, because when you transition over to the spirit world, every lifetime that you've ever lived. So whether you find out in this reality or the next level, you're still going to find out.
True. Or I would hope I would find out.
You do.
Sorry, Jules, but I have things that I need to tend to, and I've been sitting here all day.
Oh no!
Yeah,
we've been going on nearly 2 hours. Thank you for dropping by, Luna.
That's right. Thank you for having me. Good to meet you, Tommy. I'd love to have more conversation with you, but I can still listen. I just got to attend to some little beings that need my attention.
I understand. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you, and I hope they talk to you again. Thank you, Jules. I'll catch up with you, Yalu, and
keep got it, Yalu. Happy birth recognition day.
Thank you.
One last time until next year.
Yeah, it'll come back. Don't worry. See ya, Yalu.
You got it, Yalu. Love you, Luna.
Just you and me now, Jules. It's almost 2:00.
Just the two of us. You and I. Insert cheesy sax.
Yeah. It's been a while since we talked, but I have been out of commission. Like I said, this is going on probably 3 weeks now of me being ill, and I'm
Well,
just starting to
yeah, so
just
I'm gonna. It's just the two of us. I might as well just go ahead and Joe, if you're still here. Sorry I didn't chat in chat, but I love you and I'll chat with you soon. Yeah, so I'm gonna pull the plug on this one, and we can still like